What's going on, everybody? This is Matt from the Hair Transplant channel here. In this video I'm gonna talk about whether you should get a hair transplant or not, and when should you get a hair transplant. Basically you have three options. Either you get a hair transplant right now because the surgeon says yeah, you are the best candidate, or he says you are not the best candidate yet and you should go on a hair loss prevention, some medicine and stuff like that. Or the third option, your surgeon tells will probably never be a good hair transplant candidate because this or that. How you can find out which one of those people are you, I'm gonna show you in these examples in this video. I'm gonna show you people with receding hairline from like Norwood 1 until Norwood 6, 7 scale. This is the scale of baldness of receding progression, okay? I'm gonna give you kind of my opinion on that and what I would do in the similar situation. First guy, this is just the basic receding. We can still see that the top is still quite dense here, but only thing that is receding are those edges here. Okay, here I wouldn't really consider a hair transplant because I still have pretty good density at the top. Yeah, I have those edges here, the temples are receded, but you know, if it doesn't bother you, I wouldn't really get a hair transplant yet, especially if you're young like this gentleman. If you're like, I don't know, like 40, 50 and it bothers you, or for some reason you are younger, like in your 20s, 30s, and it bothers you, yeah, okay, you can get a hair transplant. You can have your forehead framed a little bit nicely like this, okay? But in my opinion, I mean, it's not a big of a difference. Would have been much more different if this guy would have receded like here, you know, and he would have been like quite bald like here, you know, like this. Okay, now I would consider a hair transplant, but here, like this original picture, I mean, you can still look stylish, cool. You can see like he chose a pretty nice, stylish, modern haircut, and it suits him, and a little bit of edges. It's actually quite okay. Here, I wouldn't really consider a hair transplant yet. I would really go on some prevention. The hair follicles on this bald spot are all already like that, and no matter what you do, what treatment you go in, PRP or I don't know what kind of therapy you do, you will never regrow your hair here. And no way, okay, because it's already bald. But again, for me, still not a good enough reason to get a hair transplant, okay? So let's now come to another example. We can see that here the edges are already quite behind, like it was unlike it was by the case with the first gentleman here, and even some miniaturized hair already at the front, you know. So this is already pretty receded. If you are in your 20s, 30s and it bothers you, like, this is a good reason to get a hair transplant, because already a lot of balding, but there is like those hair follicles will never regrow, no matter on what kind of treatment. Like if you are like now in this situation and you're like, all right, what to do? I have never used like any medicals, any treatments for hair loss prevention. It's too late to prevent, like it's too late to do it just to regrow the hair here. It's impossible, but you can still use it to prevent this hair from falling out the rest, okay? Still good one. Just go on medication now. You have two options. Go on medication and preserve this hair, and simultaneously get a hair transplant in this area here, okay? So that would probably work to kind of like recreate the hairline a little bit. I wouldn't go too crazy either here, but I would like maybe recreate the hairline like nicely. I mean, especially if you're in your 40s, 50s, like Jude, you know, I wouldn't go crazy. Like I would maybe maybe slight edges, like something like this, you know. I wouldn't go really crazy with some really precise hairline. Like this edge here on the left, it's perfect. It looks very good for his edge, you know. The best way how to know it that your hair loss is not gonna progress so much in the near time is that during the last 5 years, your hair loss situation didn't really change. It haven't really changed, okay? Which means if you look like Jude and you come to the and you visit a hair transplant surgeon today, and this is the hair loss that you've been living with for the last 5 or more years, and it kind of hit this plateau, that this hair loss didn't get worse, but it didn't get better, it just stayed like this. This is a good time to get a hair transplant, because now you know, okay, this is great, my hair, but the rest of the hair keeps like that, which is great, and I can get hair transplant to cover the bald areas here. So this is great. But if your hair loss is kind of getting worse and worse year by year, and you look like this, then for sure get on hair loss prevention as soon as possible to kind of prevent the top from further falling out, and then you can get a hair transplant as well, you know. Okay, enough about this guy. Now let's come to another. Okay, and this is the tricky thing, you know. If you look like this, you are about to get bald, but you have a lot of miniaturized hair. Whether you are a man or a woman, you know, you start seeing some receding, you know. Maybe you've been seeing that for a couple months or years. This thing, I mean, it's not a really good, I mean, I wouldn't get a hair transplant immediately here. I would for sure go on some hair loss prevention like minoxidil, like finasteride, doing some PRP sessions, and using a lot of DHT blockers, whether a shampoo or pill, saw palmetto, or some oils like pumpkin seed oil and stuff like that. But I wouldn't really consider hair transplant right away. I would go on such treatment, as I mentioned, like for 1-2 years, and then I would see if it got worse or not. If it got worse, then, and I really hate being bald and looking bald, then I would get a hair transplant. But maybe it helped and you actually regrew some of your hair here, and this hair here started to grow and get thicker. So this is good thing, you know. I would keep being on this treatment until it's not really working for me, or until I don't find it more, or until I don't want to do it. It's just too annoying for me, it's maybe too expensive, it takes a lot of time and mental energy from me. Then I would be like, alright, let's get a hair transplant. Now let's come to another situation. What about if you are this guy who starts losing his hair on the crown? And especially here, again, we see a clear bald spot here. Will you regrow your hair here? No. Will you be able to regrow your hair here somehow with some natural or some finasteride or some other stuff? Not really. I mean, it's already bald. It's very hard to regrow your hair in this area. Especially, I mean, minoxidil and finasteride actually seem to work much better on the crown and here than they seem to work on the front. They actually usually don't work on the front by most individuals, but if you use finasteride or minoxidil, you can definitely thicken up all those hair here. Look, you can thicken them up so they can look, because they're just miniaturized, they're still there. If you do it for like 1 year, you can achieve a similar density as this here, as the thicker hair which is all around here. So this is possible. So this, again, try some medication for a year. If it works, keep at it until it stops working, or it's too annoying for you, or it's just works but not so good and you still lose a lot of hair. Then eventually you can get a hair transplant here as well. But you are not the best candidate right away, in my opinion here, you know, because still a lot of miniaturized hair which can be saved. And if you would just transplant like new follicles here, 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 what can happen that you will destroy a lot of existing hair which is still here. You can still have follicles transplanted here because there are no hairs here, so you will not damage anything around it. But if you start planting again follicles in those areas here, you can destroy and damage existing grafts. Okay, you can just damage existing hairs, you know, those hairs here. You can make them fall out with this, so they experience the shock loss. Yeah, and again, shock loss can be experienced on your recipient area as well as on your donor area. So in this case, it's the donor area. sorry, in this case it's the recipient area which could experience shock loss from such hair transplant. Okay, so that would be another case. Now let's come here. Okay, and we have another nice case where hair transplant wouldn't be really suggested yet or immediately, because we have a pretty nice space on the crown which is kind of receded, but minoxidil, finasteride, and some natural remedies, you know, some peppermint oil, there are good things you can be using. Even onion juice. I've seen many cases where onion juice helped on the crown, on receded crown, which is receded but still not so receded, because we can see miniaturized hair all over the crown area, but start going on some prevention and prevent further hair loss and regrow some hair. Okay, now let's come to another example. Okay, this is very like unlucky situation to be at, because this is like, it looks like you have hair, but it's on the other hand completely bald. The problem here is that the hair loss is very unpredictable. You can see that we have still some density over here, and we have very weak density here, so unpredictable stuff. Normally if you start going bald, you start going bald in a direction like probably like I did, like from here and then slowly until your back, until your crown. But here you see that he receded in the middle, in the mid part of his scalp, and the front still kind of preserved its density. So here again, if you are young and you look like this, I would get a hair transplant. There is no reason to be young and look like this. I mean, you cannot really like, you can like thicken up the hair. I mean, if you notice, I mean, this is, if you have this hair situation, and if you've been noticing this kind of hair situation for a couple months, yeah, this was probably just a shock hair loss, a lot of stress, and a lot of bad nutritional habits going on. You can regrow a lot of hair, like with finasteride, minoxidil, etc. But if this is a hair situation that you've been experiencing for the last 2, 3, 4 years, there is no way you can regrow like a lot. You can regrow maybe 20%, but not to this kind of density. Yeah, you cannot get to this density with it, you know. So if you are like in your 40s, 50s, and you are patient, I would say finasteride, minoxidil, PRP, it's worth the try. At least 1 year. The first year, trust me, do it, and let's see if you will be satisfied with it. If it's gonna be something that you can imagine being sustainable, to kind of put the minoxidil on it topically every night, or like consume finasteride or use DHT blockers, you know. If it's something that you can get used to, you know, after 1 year, if it looks the same or even worse, then I would definitely get a hair transplant. You will probably need 2 hair transplants, so they could start doing the front, and the second session they could do the crown and the kind of mid part of the scalp. Okay, so that would be like my advice for this guy. But again, if you are like in your 20s or 30s and you experience that, I mean, I would definitely get a hair transplant, and I would again advise you to search a nice, like very skilled surgeon where not so many technicians are working on, you know, because what I found out that when a lot of technicians is kind of doing those hair transplant with those unpredictable receding pattern, you know, like here, and there is still a lot of hair. I mean, they damage a lot of, like, it depends on the technicians, but you know, I wouldn't trust them. Like, if you have a bald spot like Jude Law, I would trust the technician. Like here, I would trust the technician that he's gonna do a real good job, and he's gonna cover this area with great density, and it's gonna look great. I trust, you know, especially in Turkey, very skilled technicians. However, if your hairline looks like either this or this, especially, and you want to get a hair transplant, I would trust only a skilled surgeon who did a lot of hair transplant like this kind of hair transplant. And always, if you getting a hair transplant, just always watch the picture of before after of any guy with similar before situation as yours. If you plant grafts here, what can happen? That a lot of existing hair will what? fall out. Okay, so that's why you need a skilled surgeon who will plant those grafts very carefully, so the existing hair, the miniaturized hair, will still remain there. And what I will advise you, if you are about to get a hair transplant, wait at least 6 months and go on some hair loss prevention anyways, like minoxidil, finasteride, and DHT blockers and stuff like that. Do PRPs just to strengthen your hair, to prepare your hair for the hair transplant, so the shock loss after planting the new grafts will be minimal, you know, the shock loss of your existing hair. So this is important, especially by this hair situation like this. Okay, this is the example when you are almost completely bald, like this gentleman here, and I think he was completely bald, and this is the result of the first hair transplant. In my opinion, he got the front and mid part of his scalp transplanted. You see how receded this area is, and you can see how thick this area is. You know, just means that they took some donor grafts from this donor area. Especially by totally bald people, to begin with, density of 20 to 30 grafts per square centimeter is recommended. There is not a huge chance for shock loss, in my opinion. That way it's actually very recommended to get a hair transplant in such case. Start with the front and then proceed with the back if you are completely bald to start with. Okay, so yeah, that's how it is, but don't expect a huge density. Again, expect your density to be something like this as well in this area. You know, don't expect this kind of density. You know, you would need to have really great donor area. Alright guys, that was it. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video if it helped you, because you know, the more likes the video has, the more it shows me, okay, I should produce more of this kind of content. So if you really liked it, let me know in form of a like and subscribe for sure, as always. And it was a pleasure. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see each other in the next video.